The mysterious crash. It was a quiet evening in the far-flung colony of New Horizon. The human settlers went about their routines under a sky painted with the soft glow of twin moons. Farmers tended to their crops, mechanics repaired old machinery, and children played under the faint hum of the colony's protective shields. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, until the silence was shattered by a deafening roar from above. The settlers looked up as a fiery streak tore across the sky. Something was falling. No crashing, straight toward the outskirts of the colony. Within seconds, the ground trembled violently as the object hit with a thunderous impact, throwing up a massive cloud of dust and debris. The children screamed, the farmers dropped their tools, and everyone rushed to the edge of the settlement to see what had happened. When the dust began to settle, the outline of a small alien ship came into view. Its hull was sleek but battered, with strange markings glowing faintly along its surface. Sparks flew from its engines, and smoke billowed from cracks in the metal. It was clear that this ship had seen battle, or worse. "Stay back," shouted Ethan, the colony's lead mechanic, as he pushed through the crowd. He was a tall man with grease-stained hands and a knack for fixing just about anything. But even he looked uneasy as he approached the smoldering wreckage. As the crowd murmured in hushed tones, a loud hiss echoed from the ship. A hatch slowly opened, and everyone froze. From the thick smoke, a figure emerged, a young girl, unlike anyone they had ever seen. Her skin was pale and shimmered faintly in the moonlight, as if dusted with stardust. Her silver hair flowed around her, and her large, luminous eyes darted around nervously. She wore a strange, form-fitting suit that seemed to glow faintly, matching the markings on her ship. The crowd gasped. She wasn't human. The alien girl staggered forward, clutching her side. Her breathing was ragged, and her face was filled with desperation. She tried to speak, but her voice came out in broken, gasping words that no one understood. "Who is she?" whispered one of the settlers. "And why is she here?" "Maybe she's dangerous," said another, stepping back cautiously. Ethan raised a hand, signaling the crowd to stay calm. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said, though his own voice wavered slightly. "She doesn't look like a threat." The girl's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. With trembling hands, she reached out toward the crowd and finally managed to speak a few words in broken English. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're coming." The words sent a chill through the onlookers. Who was coming? And why was she so afraid? Ethan took a cautious step forward. "What happened to you?" he asked gently, trying not to scare her. "Why are you here?" The girl struggled to respond, her eyes darting toward the sky as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. "Ship broken," she said, pointing weakly toward the damaged vessel behind her. "Danger close." Her words were fragmented, but the urgency in her voice was unmistakable. Ethan glanced at the ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, with technology far beyond human understanding. But fixing it in its current state seemed impossible. Before he could ask more questions, the girl collapsed onto the ground, unconscious. A few settlers rushed forward, but Ethan knelt beside her first. "We need to get her to the medical bay," he said, lifting her gently. "She's injured, and we need answers." As he carried her toward the colony's clinic, the crowd parted to let him pass, their faces filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. The murmurs grew louder. "What if she's a spy?" someone asked. "Or worse, what if she's leading danger straight to us?" said another. Ethan ignored them, his focus on the girl in his arms. Whoever she was, she needed help, and fast. But deep down, even he couldn't shake the feeling that her arrival might bring more trouble than they could handle. Back at the crash site, a faint noise began to echo from the ship's interior. It was a series of beeps, growing faster and louder. A young boy who had lingered behind to look at the wreckage heard it first. His eyes widened as he saw a small device inside the ship blinking with red lights. He ran back toward the settlement, shouting, "Ethan!" There's something on her ship. It's making noise. Ethan heard the boy's cries just as he reached the medical bay. He turned to look at the sky, his heart sinking. The alien girl had warned them. They're coming. Now, he wondered, how much time did they have? And who, or what, was on their way? The girl's desperate plea. The alien girl lay motionless on the clinic's cot, her breathing shallow but steady. The colony doctor, an older woman named Dr. Amelia Lang, examined her with a mix of fascination and caution. A strange, glowing device embedded in the girl's wrist pulsed faintly, its rhythms matching her heartbeat. It wasn't human technology, far from it, but it seemed to be keeping her alive. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, deep in thought. The girl's words echoed in his mind. They're coming. He didn't like the sound of it. New Horizon was a quiet colony, far from the conflicts of Earth and the galactic frontier. They weren't equipped to deal with alien threats, much less defend themselves. Dr. Lang interrupted his thoughts. She's stable for now, but whatever happened to her, it's taken a toll. Her biology is fascinating, remarkably similar to ours, but with distinct differences. It's as if she's been engineered for resilience. Resilience won't save her if whoever's after her gets here first, Ethan replied grimly. As if on cue, the girl stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. She looked around, disoriented, before her gaze settled on Ethan and the doctor. Panic flashed across her face, and she tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "You're safe," Ethan said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're in our clinic. Do you remember what happened?" Her breathing quickened, her voice shaky. "Ship broken. I crashed." Ethan nodded. "We know, but you also said something else. You said, they're coming. Who's coming? And why are they after you?" The girl hesitated, her shimmering eyes darting between Ethan and Dr. Lang. She seemed to weigh her options, as if deciding how much she could trust them. Finally, she spoke, her voice laced with urgency. "They're hunters," she said, "mercenaries from my world. They were sent to stop me, to take back what I stole." Ethan leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What did you steal?" Her hand went instinctively to the glowing device on her wrist. "This," she whispered. "It's a prototype, a power core. My people created it to fuel weapons, terrible weapons. If they get it back, they'll use it to conquer weaker planets." She paused, her voice dropping to a trembling whisper. "Your planet is next." Dr. Lang's expression darkened. "So you came here to hide?" The girl shook her head. "No, I came to warn you. But I was too late. They're already tracking me. I can't let them find me, or this core. If they do, your colony, your world, will burn." Her words hung heavy in the air. Ethan exchanged a glance with Dr. Lang, who looked equally unsettled. It was a lot to take in, and neither of them knew if they could believe her. But there was no denying the fear in her voice, or the desperation in her eyes. "So, what do you want from us?" Ethan asked, his tone cautious. "Help," she said simply. "My ship. You must fix it. I can use it to escape, to lead them away from here, but I can't do it alone." Ethan frowned. "Your ship's in terrible shape. I don't even know if it's possible to repair it with what we have." "You have to try," she pleaded. "I'll do anything. Work, trade, whatever you need. But if my ship stays here, they'll find it. And when they do," her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He didn't like the situation one bit. Fixing her ship would be a massive risk, especially if it drew the hunters to their doorstep. But leaving her to fend for herself felt wrong, especially if what she said about the power core was true. Before he could respond, the colony's comm system crackled to life. Cutting through the tense silence, a voice came over the speakers, cold and mechanical. "Attention, human settlement. This is Commander Vorak of the Orion Mercenary Fleet. We know you're harboring a fugitive. Surrender her immediately, or face the consequences. The girl's face went pale. "They're here," she whispered. Ethan's stomach sank. He turned to the doctor. "Keep her safe. I'll handle this." As he stepped outside, the settlers were already gathering, their faces etched with fear. Above them, a massive black ship hovered in the night sky, its menacing silhouette blocking out the stars. Beams of light scanned the colony, sweeping across the buildings as if searching for something or someone. "What do we do?" one of the settlers asked, panic creeping into their voice. Ethan clenched his fists. He didn't have a plan yet, but one thing was clear. This colony was his home, and he wouldn't let these mercenaries destroy it without a fight. But as the alien girl's words echoed in his mind, he knew the stakes were higher than just the survival of New Horizon. This wasn't just about their colony anymore. This was about Earth. The dangerous bargain. Ethan stood in the middle of the colony square, staring up at the ominous black ship hovering above them. Its sleek, predatory design made his stomach churn. Bright searchlights swept across the settlement, casting eerie shadows as the voice of Commander Vorak echoed through the comms. "Surrender the fugitive, or we will take her by force. You have 10 minutes. The settlers around Ethan murmured in fear, their faces pale. Some whispered about handing over the alien girl to save themselves. Others stared at Ethan, waiting for him to make the first move. He was the mechanic, the fixer, the one who always had a plan. But this time, he felt the weight of their trust, like a boulder crushing his chest. Inside the clinic, Alira, the alien girl, paced nervously. Her hands trembled as she touched the glowing device on her wrist. "They will destroy you all," she muttered. "It's what they do. If I give myself up, maybe they'll leave." Dr. Lang frowned, her sharp eyes narrowing. "And you believe that? These mercenaries don't seem like the kind to honor a deal." Alira hesitated, then shook her head. "No, they won't. They'll take the core, wipe this colony out to cover their tracks, and move on. That's why I ran. That's why I can't let them have it." The door swung open, and Ethan stepped in, his expression grim. "We're running out of time. If we don't give them an answer, they'll attack. What's the fastest way to fix your ship?" Alira's eyes lit up with hope for a moment, but it faded quickly. "My ship's core is damaged. It's beyond repair with your tools. I might be able to stabilize it temporarily, but it won't last. I need human tech to bridge the gap." Ethan crossed his arms. "What kind of tech?" She hesitated. "Anything with a high-energy plasma output. Your colony's reactor could work, but it would drain your power grid. You'd lose heat, light, everything." Ethan's jaw tightened. The colony relied on that reactor for survival. Without it, people would freeze in the cold desert nights, and the crops in their hydroponic bays would wither. "You're asking us to sacrifice everything we've built to give you a chance at escape." Alira stepped closer, desperation in her shimmering eyes. "I know it's a lot to ask, but if they get the core, your sacrifice won't matter. They'll come for Earth next." Dr. Lang cut in, her voice sharp. "And what happens if we help you, and the repairs fail? What if you can't outrun them?" Alira took a deep breath, her expression hardening. "If that happens, I'll use the core to overload my ship. It will create a blast powerful enough to take them out. I'd rather die than let them win." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Ethan studied her, trying to decide if she was telling the truth or just trying to save her own skin. The determination in her eyes was unmistakable, but so was the fear. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for something much bigger. Outside, the mercenaries grew impatient. Another announcement boomed from their ship. 5 minutes. Make your decision, or we will begin the purge." Ethan glanced at the glowing device on her wrist. "If I give you access to the colony's reactor, will you promise to leave the moment your ship is functional?" Alira nodded firmly. "Yes, but I'll need help. Your tools, your hands. I can't do this alone." Dr. Lang frowned. "And what happens to us after you're gone? They'll still see us as a threat." I can lure them away, Illyra said. Once my ship is operational, I'll lead them into deep space. They won't waste time chasing you. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He turned to Dr. Lang. What do you think? The doctor sighed. She's right about one thing. If they get their hands on that core, it's over. For all of us. Helping her might be our only chance. Ethan nodded reluctantly. All right, we'll do it. But if you betray us, alien or not, you won't live to regret it. Illyra looked him square in the eye. I won't. Minutes later, Ethan, Illyra, and a small team of settlers were back at the crash site. The ship looked worse up close. Its hull was charred, and several panels hung loose, exposing intricate circuits that glowed faintly. Inside, the cockpit was cramped and filled with alien tech that none of the humans could comprehend. Illyra quickly got to work, her hands moving with practiced precision. She pointed to various parts of the ship, barking instructions in broken English. This cable, connect to power source. That panel, secure it, or it will overload. Ethan and his team followed her lead, their movements hurried but careful. Every second felt like an eternity. Above them, the mercenary ship hovered ominously, its weapons primed. Are you sure this will work? Ethan asked as he secured a glowing conduit to the ship's core. No, Illyra admitted, but it's better than waiting to die. Just as they finished the last connection, the comms crackled again. Commander Vorek's voice was colder this time. Time's up. Begin the purge. A series of bright red beams shot down from the mercenary ship, slicing through the air. One beam struck a nearby storage silo, causing it to explode in a shower of fire and debris. The settlers screamed, scattering in panic. Ethan grabbed Illyra's arm. We're out of time. Is it ready? She nodded. It's functional, but I need a plasma surge to power it up. Your reactor? Now. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his comm unit and barked orders to the colony's control center. Divert all power to the reactor and prepare for an external surge. Do it now. The settlers watched in terrified silence as the lights around them flickered and died. The colony plunged into darkness, but Illyra's ship began to hum with life. The core glowed brighter, pulsing with energy. Illyra climbed into the cockpit and looked at Ethan. I'll lead them away. But if I fail, she hesitated, her voice soft. Thank you for trying. Ethan stepped back as the ship's engines roared to life. Don't fail, he said simply. With a deafening blast, the alien ship shot into the sky, leaving the humans behind in the cold darkness. Above them, the mercenary vessel began to move, its searchlights locking onto Illyra's ship as it ascended into space. The chase had begun, and the fate of the colony, and possibly Earth, now rested on her shoulders. The hunters arrive. The colony remained cloaked in darkness, its people huddled in silence as Illyra's ship disappeared into the night sky. A distant rumble marked the beginning of the hunt. The mercenary vessel, a behemoth bristling with weapons and shields, roared to life in pursuit of its prey. But Ethan knew this wasn't over. The mercenaries weren't the type to leave loose ends, and Illyra's escape might have only bought them time, not safety. Inside the mercenary ship, Commander Vorek, a towering alien with deep blue skin and glowing yellow eyes, watched Illyra's fleeing ship on a holographic display. Its sharp, angular armor gleamed under the dim lights of the command deck. She dares to run, he growled, his voice like grinding metal. And the humans, they dare to interfere. An officer beside him, smaller but equally menacing, gestured toward the colony on the display. Shall we destroy the settlement, Commander? Teach them a lesson. Vorek raised a hand to stop him. Not yet. Humans are useful. Crude, yes, but they might have learned something about the prototype. Let's see what secrets they hold. Back on New Horizon, Ethan and Dr. Lang stood near the colony's comm tower, its equipment sparking faintly after the sudden power drain. The darkness around them was oppressive, broken only by the faint glow of the mercenary ship lingering in the sky, It was clear the vessel hadn't fully left. "What are they waiting for?" Lang muttered, peering through binoculars. "They're just sitting there." Ethan frowned. "They know we're hiding something. They're not leaving until they get it." Before Lang could respond, a crackling sound came from the comm system. The mercenary commander's voice filled the air, sending a chill down their spines. "Humans of New Horizon," Vorik began, his tone dripping with contempt. "Do you think your little alien friend will save you? She's a coward, running from her fate, leaving you to clean up her mess." Ethan clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. He reached for the comm controls, but Lang grabbed his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "They're trying to bait us." Vorik's voice continued, colder now. "You helped her, and that makes you complicit. But I am merciful. Give me the coordinates of her escape path, and I'll leave your colony untouched. Resist, and, well, let's just say your crops won't survive what's coming." Ethan glared at the comms, then glanced back at the settlers gathered in the square. They were scared, more scared than they'd ever been. Some of them whispered among themselves, the seeds of doubt taking root. "What if we do tell them?" One man asked, his voice shaky. "It's not our fight. We shouldn't die for her." Another settler, a woman with a young child clinging to her leg, added, "She's not even one of us. Let them deal with her." Ethan stepped forward, raising his voice to address the crowd. "You think they'll just leave us alone if we cooperate? Look at that ship. Do they look like the type to honor a deal?" The murmuring quieted, but fear lingered in their eyes. Lang crossed her arms, her tone firm. "We help them now, and they'll see us as weak. They'll come back whenever they want something. Is that the kind of life you want for your families?" A tense silence followed. Ethan turned back to the comms and pressed the transmission button. "Listen up, Vorak," he said, his voice steady. "You're not getting anything from us. So why don't you pack up your oversized bucket of bolts and leave?" There was a long pause before Vorik's laugh rumbled through the speakers. Bold words for a man with no shields, no weapons, and no way off this rock. "Very well. You've chosen your fate. The siege begins." A low hum filled the air as the mercenary ship activated its weapon systems. Bright red beams shot down from the vessel, targeting key areas of the colony. The water filtration plant exploded in a cloud of steam, and a comm relay tower crumbled under the force of another blast. Panic spread like wildfire as settlers scrambled for cover. Ethan barked orders, trying to keep everyone calm. "Get to the shelters. Stay out of the open." The mercenaries weren't aiming to destroy the entire colony, yet. Their attacks were precise, targeting resources and infrastructure to weaken their resolve. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Elira's escape. Far above the chaos, Elira's ship raced through the void, its engines straining under the pressure. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to maintain her course while monitoring the mercenary ship behind her. They were close, too close. She activated her comms and sent a desperate message back to the colony. "Ethan, can you hear me?" Static crackled before his voice came through, strained but clear. "We're a little busy down here. What's your status?" "They're locked onto me," she replied. "But I'm leading them away. If I can get far enough, I'll use the core to disrupt their systems." "You better make it quick," Ethan said. "They're tearing us apart down here." Guilt gnawed at her. These humans had risked everything for her, and now they were paying the price. She tightened her grip on the controls. "Hold on. I'll end this, one way or another." Back on the colony. As the attacks intensified, Ethan and a small group of settlers worked frantically to repair the damaged comm systems. They needed to find a way to counter the mercenaries' assault, but their options were limited. Lang appeared, holding a device scavenged from Elira's ship. "This," she said, her voice urgent, "might help. It's some kind of signal disruptor. If we can amplify it through our comms, we might be able to blind their sensors temporarily." Ethan grabbed the device, his mind racing. "How long do we have?" Lang glanced at the sky, where the mercenary ship loomed ominously. Not long. Ethan nodded. Then let's get to work. As they connected the alien device to the colony's comm array, Vorik's voice came through the speakers again. Last chance, humans. Surrender or face annihilation. Ethan smirked grimly, his fingers flying over the controls. How about you face some interference instead? With a press of a button, the disruptor activated, sending a pulse of energy through the air. The mercenary ship's lights flickered, and their weapons faltered. For the first time, the settlers saw a glimmer of hope. But Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come. The secret revealed. The pulse from the disruptor had only bought them a brief respite. The mercenary ship's lights flickered and dimmed for a few moments, but they quickly regained their strength. Ethan, sweat beading on his forehead, watched the ship above them through binoculars, knowing that whatever small advantage they had wouldn't last long. We need to do more than just delay them, Dr. Lang said, her voice tight with frustration as she worked alongside Ethan in the colony's makeshift command center. We can't keep playing defense forever. We need a plan, something bigger. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. Elira's ship was still out there, fleeing through space, but the mercenaries weren't likely to give up so easily. He glanced at the flickering screens in front of him. Messages were coming through from the settlers in different parts of the colony, reporting fires, structural damage, and the collapse of the hydroponic crops. The situation was dire. Just then, a message from Elira cut through the static. Ethan, I need to tell you something. Something important. Her voice crackled with static, but there was a raw urgency in it that made his heart skip. I never told you everything. Ethan's heart sank. He had been waiting for this moment, the part where the alien girl finally came clean. He gripped the comms, his voice steady but tense. Go ahead. Elira hesitated for a moment before continuing, her voice barely more than a whisper. The core I stole, it's not just a power source. It's a weapon, a device capable of wiping out entire star systems. I took it to stop my people from using it to conquer the galaxy and Earth. Ethan's jaw tightened as he processed the new revelation. He had known that Elira was hiding something, but the truth was even more disturbing than he imagined. A weapon that could destroy entire star systems, and it was on Earth. Why didn't you tell us this sooner? Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. I wasn't sure I could trust you, Elira admitted, her voice shaking. But now, I'm telling you because you need to understand what's at stake. If the mercenaries get their hands on the core, they'll use it to trigger a galactic war. If my people follow their lead, Earth will be the first target. Ethan's mind spun. Earth, his home planet. The last thing he ever expected was to be dragged into an intergalactic conflict that could mean the end of humanity. Dr. Lang spoke up, her voice firm. So, if we let her go, she might be able to use that weapon to stop the mercenaries. But if she fails, then Earth becomes a target, Ethan finished grimly. He turned away from the comms, pacing back and forth. The stakes had just gotten higher. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. The settlers here on New Horizon had done nothing to deserve this fight, yet they were caught in the middle of a galactic war that had nothing to do with them. I never wanted this, Elira's voice continued from the comms. But I have no choice. You have to understand. If I don't stop them, your world will fall. But if you help me finish the repairs, if we can get the core working again, I can lead the mercenaries away. I can stop them. For good. Ethan stared at the comms equipment in front of him, his mind racing. Could they really trust her? She was offering salvation, but at what cost? We'll help you, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He had no other choice. But after this, no more secrets. We're in this together. Elira's voice sounded more certain now. Thank you. The final decision. As Ethan and Dr. Lang worked feverishly to make final preparations for the risky plan, a heavy silence fell over the colony. The settlers were waiting, watching, unsure of what would come next. "Are you sure this is the right move?" Lang asked quietly, her eyes reflecting the weight of the decision. "We're not just risking our lives anymore. We're risking humanity's future." Ethan looked over at the comms array, where the last transmission from Alira blinked faintly on the screen. He remembered the fear in her eyes when she first arrived, the desperation that had driven her to seek refuge on their world. He wasn't sure if he could trust her completely, but he knew that the alternative was much worse. "If we don't do this, she'll never be able to stop them," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We have to help her finish what she started. We don't have a choice." Dr. Lang nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "Then let's make sure she succeeds." The core's power surge. The alien ship was now fully powered, and Alira had managed to stabilize the core, barely. The unstable energy fluctuations still rattled the ship's frame, but it was enough to create a massive power surge that could disrupt the mercenary systems. But there was a catch. If Alira overloaded the core to generate enough energy, it would leave her ship useless. It would become nothing more than debris, and she would be stranded in deep space. It was a risk she had to take, but as the countdown to the core's detonation began, a cold realization washed over her. She might not make it out alive. With a deep breath, she activated the core's overload sequence. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice almost a prayer. "Thank you for trusting me. I won't let them win." In the distance, the mercenary ship remained in orbit, unaware of the trap being set. They were focused on the colony below, trying to find a way to break its defenses. But soon, they would be blindsided by a power they didn't understand. A hidden trap. Ethan stared at the sky, his heart pounding. If Alira succeeded, they might just have a fighting chance. But if she failed... The mercenary ship suddenly lurched as its systems began to flicker. Lights blinked in erratic patterns, and a loud mechanical groan filled the air. The mercenaries had no idea what was happening. They had been caught off guard. Alira's ship shot across the sky, leaving a trail of blinding light as it headed directly for the mercenary vessel. The core, now overloaded, created a massive pulse that engulfed the mercenary ship. For a moment, everything went silent. And then the explosion came. Aftermath. The colony was left in stunned silence as the mercenary ship exploded into a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave sent a ripple through the atmosphere, but the danger was over. The hunters were gone. Alira's ship, however, was no longer visible. It had vanished into the dark expanse of space, taking the last of the core's power with it. Ethan could only hope she had made it out. Dr. Lang put a hand on his shoulder. "We did it. We survived." Ethan stared at the stars, knowing that their fight wasn't over. But for now, at least humanity had a future. A risky plan. The aftermath of the explosion sent waves of shock and confusion rippling through New Horizon. The mercenary ship had been obliterated in a spectacular burst of light, but the cost of that victory was unknown. Alira's ship had vanished in the aftermath of the blast, and with it, the faint hope that she had escaped. For now, all that remained was a quiet, eerie calm, broken only by the distant echoes of fire and collapse from the mercenaries' sudden assault on the colony. As Ethan stood amidst the ruined settlement, his mind raced. They had won, but at what cost? The colony was battered and broken, and he wasn't sure if Alira was even alive. His eyes scanned the sky, expecting, hoping, for a sign, any sign that she had survived. Beside him, Dr. Lang adjusted her glasses and surveyed the damage. "We can rebuild," she said, her tone resolute. "But that ship, that weapon, it was our best chance. Without it, the question is, what next?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He thought of Alira, of her struggle to survive, to stop the mercenaries, and to protect a planet that wasn't even her own. She had done everything she could, but there were too many unknowns. Her ship was gone, and her future was uncertain. But in that silence, a different thought came to him. "If she's alive, she'll come back," Ethan said, finally breaking the silence. "She won't leave us without a way to finish this. But for now, we need to prepare." Lang raised an eyebrow. "Prepare for what?" Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady but filled with the knowledge of what they had yet to face. For when they return, the call to action. Ethan had seen this before. People with nothing left to lose, fighting with everything they had. He knew that if the mercenaries had one thing, it was determination. And though their ship had been destroyed, the commanders and fleet that hunted Illyria were still out there, still waiting to strike. New Horizon had barely scraped by, but they were vulnerable, scattered, and bruised. "Gather the survivors. We have to rebuild our defenses," he ordered. "We don't know how long we have before they regroup. But one thing's clear. They won't stop coming until they get what they want." Dr. Lang nodded, her expression hardening. "We've got no choice but to hold the line. We'll need weapons, supplies, everything." The settlers had already begun to recover from the initial shock, now working together, reinforcing the damaged structures and preparing for the worst. But Ethan's mind was elsewhere, on Illyria. As much as he hated to admit it, they needed her. He stood at the colony's makeshift command center, staring out into the vast, empty space where the mercenary ship had once hovered. A part of him wanted to believe the fight was over, but deep down, he knew they had only just begun. Then, as if answering his unspoken thoughts, a faint signal crackled over the comms, sending a shock through his system. "Ethan, it's me. I'm alive." Illyria's return. The voice was weak, distorted by static, but Ethan recognized it instantly. Illyria. She was alive. His pulse quickened. "Where are you?" he asked, rushing to the comms. "What happened? How did you survive?" Illyria's voice came through again, clearer this time, but still strained. "The core, it wasn't enough. I had to eject. I'm in a remote system, but I can't stay here long. They're coming for me. I can feel it." Ethan's heart sank. "You can't be serious. You're telling me they survived that blast?" Illyria's tone was grim. "They're ruthless. They've rebuilt their forces. But I'm not going down without a fight." Ethan didn't hesitate. "We'll come for you. Hold on. We'll get you back." She paused for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but no less determined. "I won't drag you into this anymore. I was foolish to trust you, your people, but you deserve to know the truth. The weapon, the core, it's not just for defense. It's a beacon, a signal. If the mercenaries get it, they can call in reinforcements, armies from my world. Earth won't stand a chance." The weight of her words settled in. "So, stopping them isn't just about fighting them," Ethan said slowly. "It's about making sure they don't get a chance to regroup. We need to destroy the core before they use it to call in reinforcements." Illyria was quiet for a long time, and Ethan could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. Finally, she spoke again. "It's dangerous. The core can be a weapon, yes, but it's also the only thing keeping me alive out here. If I destroy it, I'll have no way to survive." A moment of silence passed before Ethan spoke, his voice unwavering. "Then we'll make sure you don't have to do it alone." The decision was made. There was no turning back. Ethan called a meeting with the settlers, outlining the plan. Everyone who was able would prepare to leave the colony and assist in a final desperate mission to locate Illyria and help her destroy the core before the mercenaries could use it to bring down a galactic invasion. "We have to be ready," Ethan said to the group, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we can reach Illyria, we'll have one chance to stop this madness. If we don't, Earth could be lost, and we can't let that happen." Dr. Lang and a few of the colony's brightest minds were already working on a strategy to modify the remaining tech from Illyria's ship. They would build an emergency pulse generator capable of disabling the mercenary ships if they came too close, but it would be a one-time use, and it was only a last resort. Meanwhile, Ethan, and a small team of volunteers began preparations to leave the colony. The hunt was on. They would track down Aelira, help her destroy the core, and end the mercenary threat once and for all. But even as Ethan gathered the settlers and prepared for the final stretch of their journey, a chilling thought crept into his mind. They didn't know where Aelira was hiding, and time was running out. The mercenaries were closing in, and when they did, there would be no more time for second chances. The final stand. The galaxy had grown dark, but it wasn't the cold void of space that chilled Ethan to his core. It was the looming shadow of the mercenaries, hunting relentlessly for Aelira, the only hope to stop an invasion that threatened not just New Horizon, but the very existence of humanity. Ethan stood at the helm of a modified shuttle, staring out the cockpit window at the swirling stars ahead. The makeshift fleet was small, barely a handful of ships stripped together from whatever was salvageable. But each one was now a symbol of defiance. Every settler on board had volunteered, from engineers to farmers, all ready to risk their lives to save a planet they had barely begun to call home. Behind him, Dr. Lang worked with a group of engineers to fine-tune the pulse generator they had cobbled together from Aelira's alien technology. The device, though powerful, was unstable, and they only had one shot at it. If they failed, it would be their last. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," Dr. Lang said, her voice tinged with exhaustion but steely determination. "If we don't catch up with her soon, we'll never get another chance." Ethan nodded, his jaw set. He knew the risks. They all did. But they couldn't let Aelira face the mercenaries alone. The fact that she had survived this long, under constant pursuit, proved just how formidable she was. But if she couldn't destroy the core before the mercenaries captured her, there was no telling how much damage they could do. "Signals coming through," the comm officer announced, drawing Ethan's attention back to the control panel. A familiar voice crackled across the comms. "Ethan," Aelira's voice came through, faint but clear. I'm sorry. I didn't think I'd reach you." A surge of relief washed over Ethan. "Aelira, where are you?" he asked urgently, gripping the armrest of his seat. She was quiet for a moment before answering, her voice strained. "I'm on a moon. It's a dead world, barely a blip on the star maps. They don't know I'm here, but I don't have much time. I'm running low on power. They're getting closer." Ethan's grip tightened on the armrest. The distance was growing, but he couldn't let fear or doubt stop him now. "We're coming to you. Hold on." The chase through the void. The shuttle surged forward, cutting through the darkness of space toward Aelira's last known location. As they approached, the stars ahead grew distant and cold. The moon, once a silent and uninhabited place, loomed ahead, a desolate landscape covered in jagged rock formations and ancient craters. The perfect place for a desperate last stand. Ethan's ship broke through the dense atmosphere of the moon's thin air, and the team descended toward the surface. They were close now, closer than ever, and yet the tension in the air felt suffocating. Aelira's ship was visible, half buried in the moon's dust. The familiar contours of her ship, now worn and battered from its escape, stood out against the stark landscape. But there was no sign of her. "Not yet." "Ethan," came Aelira's voice again, this time sounding weaker. "I can't hold them off much longer. The core is still active, but I'm running out of options. I'll destroy it, if I have to. I don't care about the consequences anymore." Ethan's stomach twisted. The core was their only hope, but if Aelira was willing to destroy it, there would be no way to use it against the mercenaries. They needed that power. "We're almost there, Aelira. You don't have to do this alone," he urged, his voice filled with urgency. "We'll get you out of here. Just hold on for a little longer." The comm went silent for a moment, and Ethan's heart raced. What if it was too late? What if they had waited too long? The mercenaries close in. Above the moon, the mercenary ship had finally caught up. Their dark silhouette blotted out the stars, their weapons primed for the final assault. As their ship descended, A low, ominous hum filled the shuttle's comm system. The mercenaries were closing in, fast. Ethan cursed under his breath. They were running out of time, and if the mercenaries got to Elira first, they would have control of the core. He glanced over at Dr. Lang, who was readying the pulse generator. "Once we're in range, we'll fire," Dr. Lang said, her voice tense but calm. "If they got their shields up, this might not even faze them. But it's our only shot." Ethan nodded. The core, Elira's heart, was their key to victory. If they didn't make it, the war for Earth would be lost before it even began. The final battle. The shuttle touched down on the moon's dusty surface with a soft thud. Ethan's boots hit the ground first, followed closely by the rest of the team. They moved quickly, their hearts pounding in their chests, weapons ready, scanning the rocky landscape for any sign of Elira. And then they saw it, Elira, standing alone in front of her ship. She was weakened, but determined, her hand hovering over the core, her finger twitching as if ready to destroy it. "Elira," Ethan called out, rushing toward her. Her eyes flickered toward him, her face a mixture of relief and regret. "Ethan, I didn't want this, but I couldn't let them have it. It's the only way to stop them from calling in reinforcements. I have to destroy it now." "No," Ethan said firmly, grabbing her arm. "We have a plan. We're going to help you finish this." Before Elira could respond, the sound of engines filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The mercenary ship was descending rapidly toward the moon's surface. The deep, rumbling voice echoed from the comms. "Surrender, Elira. You cannot escape." Elira looked at Ethan, her face filled with uncertainty. "They're here. They're not getting it," Ethan said, turning to Dr. Lang. "Ready the pulse." The mercenaries landed nearby, their footsteps thundering as they advanced. Ethan took a deep breath and gave Dr. Lang a sharp nod. With a hum of energy, the pulse generator activated. A blinding surge of light shot out toward the mercenary ship. For a moment, the entire surface of the moon lit up in a brilliant burst. The mercenaries were caught off guard, their shields faltering, their systems disrupted. The ship staggered in the air, but the mercenaries quickly regained control. "Foolish humans," came the cold voice of Commander Vorik. "You cannot stop us." But it was too late. Elira, eyes burning with determination, activated the core one last time. The device pulsed with a blinding energy that enveloped everything. The mercenary ship began to flicker, its systems crashing one by one as the energy overloaded its shields. The core, once a symbol of destruction, now became the beacon of salvation. With a final deafening explosion, the mercenary ship disintegrated in the atmosphere, its crew scattered across the stars. Aftermath. As the dust settled, Ethan, Elira, and the remaining settlers stood in the aftermath of the battle. The sky was eerily quiet, the moon a silent witness to the destruction and victory. "We did it," Dr. Lang whispered, her voice barely audible over the comms. Elira looked out at the stars, her face softening for the first time. "You saved me, and you saved your world. I didn't think it was possible." Ethan stepped closer to her, offering a small smile. "You did more than that. You saved us all." Elira nodded, her expression bittersweet. "I don't know what comes next, but for the first time in a long time, I think I have a chance at redemption." As the shuttle lifted off the moon, headed back to New Horizon, Ethan gazed out into the stars. The threat was over, but the future was uncertain. Earth was safe, for now, and they would rebuild together.